It was a cold, silent night in the village of 𝗟𝗡𝗡, and the only sound was the rustling of the trees outside. 𝗟𝗢𝗡𝗡 had just returned from the market, the evening air thick with fog. As she entered her room, she felt a strange unease that she couldn't explain. The moonlight cast eerie shadows, and her eyes were drawn to the mirror hanging on the wall across the room. It was an old mirror, one that had been in the family for generations. 𝗟𝗢𝗡𝗡 had heard the warnings many times. Never look at the mirror at night. But tonight, she felt an overwhelming urge to look. Her fingers trembled as she reached for the switch to turn on the light. But as her hand moved toward the bulb, something in the mirror caught her attention. There was movement. 𝗟𝗢𝗡𝗡 froze. The reflection in the mirror wasn't hers. A tall, dark figure stood behind her, its face shadowed and unclear. Her heart raced, her mouth going dry. She quickly turned around, but no one was there. Her breath came in shallow gasps, and she slowly looked back at the mirror. The figure was gone. 𝗟𝗢𝗡𝗡 stood in the dim room, her eyes locked on the mirror. It was impossible. She had been alone, hadn't she? But the feeling of something unseen, something lurking in the shadows, wouldn't leave her. The night seemed heavier now, as if the house itself was holding its breath. 𝗟𝗢𝗡𝗡 knew she should look away, leave the room, go outside to get some air. But the mirror called to her, like it was pulling her in, beckoning her to see something. Something she wasn't supposed to. Her gaze was now fixed on the mirror, and for a moment, she wondered if it had been a trick of the light. Maybe she had imagined it. But then, something shifted again. A faint image appeared, slowly becoming clearer. A face, pale and drawn, with hollow eyes staring directly at her. The figure was closer now, standing just behind her reflection. The face in the mirror began to smile, an unnatural, twisted grin that made 𝗟𝗢𝗡𝗡's blood run cold. Her body went rigid with fear. This was no trick of the light. It was real. The figure in the mirror wasn't her imagination. It was watching her, its grin widening with each passing second. 𝗟𝗢𝗡𝗡 wanted to scream, but her voice was trapped in her throat. She felt paralyzed, unable to move, unable to tear her eyes away. The figure raised a hand, and 𝗟𝗢𝗡𝗡 could see it was pointing directly at her. "Don't look at me," a voice whispered in her mind, soft yet menacing. 𝗟𝗢𝗡𝗡's heart skipped a beat. The voice was not hers. It was distant, hollow, and cold. It felt like it was coming from the mirror itself, from the depth of the figure's twisted face. 𝗟𝗢𝗡𝗡 fought to break free of the trance, but the more she struggled, the more drawn she became to the mirror. She didn't want to look, but she couldn't stop herself. The figure's eyes bore into her soul, and she could feel her strength slipping away. The whispering voice grew louder, now clearly audible in her ears. "You should never look into the mirror at night. You have awakened me." 𝗟𝗢𝗡𝗡's breath quickened, and she tried to look away, but her eyes were glued to the mirror. A cold sweat broke out across her forehead. What do you want?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. The figure in the mirror didn't respond at first. Then, it began to laugh. A slow, chilling laugh that echoed through the room. 𝗟𝗢𝗡𝗡 staggered backward, trying to break free from the mirror's hold. But it was as if the room had closed in around her. The walls seemed to pulse with a dark energy, pressing in on her, trapping her. The figure's laughter grew louder, more mocking. It took a step forward in the mirror, and 𝗟𝗢𝗡𝗡's pulse raced as she realized the reflection was moving closer. The mirror wasn't just showing her reflection anymore, it was pulling the figure closer to her reality. Suddenly, the figure in the mirror reached out with long, bony fingers, its hand coming closer to her own. 𝗟𝗢𝗡𝗡 screamed and stumbled backward, crashing into the bedpost. But the mirror had already changed. The figure was no longer confined to its reflection. It had crossed into her world. She saw its fingers twitch and curl as if it were testing the air around her, preparing to make its move. 𝗟𝗢𝗡𝗡 couldn't breathe. The figure stepped out of the mirror, its body now fully in the room with her. It was tall, too tall, its skin as pale as death, its eyes black holes that seemed to swallow the light around them. It smiled again, the grin stretching far too wide to be human. "You should have listened," the voice said again, now filling the room, drowning out all other sound. "Now you're mine." Kemi's mind raced for an escape. Her legs were heavy, her body paralyzed with fear. She felt like she was trapped in a nightmare that she couldn't wake up from. The figure moved closer, its footfalls silent on the floor, as though it were floating rather than walking. "Please," she begged, her voice barely above a whisper. "Please, leave me alone." But the figure didn't stop. It reached out, its cold, clammy fingers brushing against her skin. Kemi recoiled, pulling herself to the corner of the room, her heart thundering in her chest. The figure didn't speak anymore, it didn't need to. The malice in its eyes was enough. But then, just as quickly as it had appeared, the figure froze. Kemi looked up, confused. Was it leaving? Was it gone? But then she noticed something was wrong with the mirror. The glass had begun to ripple, as though it was alive, stretching and warping before her eyes. The reflection in the mirror began to change again. The figure's face twisted, becoming more grotesque with each passing moment. Its eyes grew larger, and its smile became a horrific, twisted thing, as though its face was being stretched beyond recognition. Kemi couldn't look away, even though every part of her screamed to flee. The figure's voice filled her mind once more. "I am the one who watches," it whispered, "the one who waits. And you will never escape." Kemi backed away further, her body shaking, her mind struggling to comprehend what was happening. The mirror was no longer just a mirror. It was a gateway, and the creature that had been in it had come through. She needed to leave. She had to get out of the house. But as she turned to run, the door slammed shut with a loud bang. She spun around, only to find the figure standing directly in front of her. Its grin stretched even wider, its mouth now impossibly wide. The room seemed to spin around her, the walls closing in. The figure's hands reached out, grabbing her by the arm with a strength she couldn't break. Kemi tried to scream, but no sound came out. "You shouldn't have looked," it hissed. "Now, you belong to me." The grip on her arm tightened, pulling her closer to the mirror, toward the shadowy depths that awaited her. Her eyes widened in terror as she realized what was about to happen. The mirror wasn't just a reflection, it was a prison. Kemi struggled, using all her strength to fight against the figure's hold. But it was useless. She was being pulled closer to the mirror, the darkness swallowing everything in its path. The creature's laughter filled the room again, echoing in her ears. "You belong to me now," it repeated, the words sending shivers down her spine. But just as she thought she couldn't take any more, something strange happened. The figure's face flickered, the image distorting as if the creature was struggling to maintain its form. Kemi felt her grip slipping, her vision narrowing as the mirror grew larger and larger. She realized the creature was losing its power over her, but not fast enough. "No," she cried out, her voice breaking through the silence. "I won't go with you." But the creature didn't listen. The mirror was pulling her in, and nothing she did seemed to stop it. With one final, desperate push, Kemi tore herself away, throwing herself onto the floor. The room grew silent. Kemi lay there, panting, her body aching with exhaustion and fear. She stared at the mirror, her heart still racing. The creature was gone, but something was different. The reflection in the glass was no longer hers. It was a dark, empty void. The air in the room was thick with a palpable tension. She felt it again. The pull, the urge to look into the mirror, to see what was waiting for her. Kemi hesitated. She wanted to run, to get out of the house, to escape the nightmare that had taken over her life. But something was still drawing her in, pulling her toward the mirror. Slowly, her hand reached out toward it, as if it wasn't even her own. She could feel her fingers brushing against the cold glass. The pull was stronger now, overwhelming her thoughts. She was about to touch the mirror when a voice, low and sharp, whispered in her ear. "Don't." Kemi froze, her fingers inches from the mirror. The voice wasn't the creature's. It was her mother's. "Kemi," her mother's voice whispered, filled with urgency. "You have to leave. It's not over yet." But before Kemi could respond, the ground beneath her feet began to shake violently. The mirror cracked, and she could hear the faint sound of something, or someone, moving behind it. The figure was coming back. Watch what happened in the next story.